I'm Chris, and thank you guys for having me. I'm the CEO of Techworks, and these nonprofit kind of speaking engagements that they do, they're usually set up by the Impact Collaborative. So the Impact Collaborative is a group that we are part of nonprofits getting together to share tech ideas. It was run by the woman who is the director of the Child Center of New York. She started that program with this group called the Impact Collaborative to get nonprofits together, sharing ideas on how they can use tech and AI and other stuff better, and find vendors that can help them out so that they don't have to go through all these tough processes and maybe vet some of those people ahead of time instead of going through the RFP process and stuff like that. So they asked me about this, and you guys are kind of like my guinea pigs for these events. I did this once before in another event for a nonprofit, and then that wound up going into the Impact Collaborative as one of our speaking events. So I'm Chris Coluccio, I'm the CEO of Techworks. We're obviously a nonprofit-focused outsourced IT company. So that's what we do here. So just a little bit other background on this, and so you guys know that definitely from my standpoint, I feel your pain doing these things. I want you to understand from Techworks' side, we've been doing work for large nonprofits and small nonprofits for over 20 years. Myself, I also run a nonprofit for suicide and mental health awareness and the MacArthur Business Alliance, which is a 501c6 in this area. So we understand the same challenges that you guys have trying to find the right vendors and the right programs. And to be honest with you, specifically when it comes to technology and RFPs, you guys are up against like some of the worst products that are out there, the most difficult to figure out. I go down to a conference every year called NPEN, the Nonprofit Technology Network. And when I go down there, the biggest complaint is we have so much to choose from and none of them seem to do what we want, right? So it is really tough in the nonprofit field to pick products, to pick vendors, because there's a lot of flash, and sometimes you guys even get taken advantage of. We're all taking advantage of with that. So we want to talk about some ways that, specifically with the RFP process, what we can do better with that RFP process and why it's kind of stinks, right? We had an RFP that came to us recently, and one of those things we're talking about the questions. We went out there and, after we got the RFP, we went out and asked questions, and there was, between the three vendors that they had, there was probably maybe 30 questions that came out. Of those 30 questions, 15 of them had to be determined as the answer to that. So how can we ask any questions like they're to be determined when? Like, how am I going to bid on that? Hi, Kira. So that's the kind of stuff that we're up against as vendors going, why these RFPs are almost impossible to do. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the myths of these RFPs, right? So one of the things I heard, and I actually had somebody tell me this yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was at a nonprofit event, and they said that, RFPs are mandatory for all nonprofits. And they was like, we have to do it. It's like law. And I was like, no, that's not true at all. There are no federal laws that require nonprofits to do RFPs or 3 bids. Those are things that you guys do out of due diligence, right? They may be in your bylaws. They may be part of a grant or something else to do that, but they are not law. They are not something that you guys have to do. They're governance choices. They're not a legal requirement. And when I said that to them, they were like, I didn't even know that. And that's kind of weird. Like, I thought that was something we all understood, right? So we must always get 3 bids. Same thing. The 3 bid rule is an internal policy, not a legal mandate. We had talked about that before. Sometimes it's quality over quantity. Sometimes 3 bids isn't enough, to be honest with you. Like, we've seen 3 bids, and they're all 3 crappy bids. Oh, great, we got 3 crappy bids. Like, why is 3 the magic number there? I don't know. Maybe because we all watched Schoolhouse Rock when we were little. Red 3s. Forget it. That was a bad joke. So the quantity in this 3 bid rule thing doesn't make any sense to me. It certainly doesn't lend itself to get the best products. And I got to be honest with you, we've been on the other side of that where we've written the bids, and this is what we do. And we went out to get 3 bids just to cover the governance thing that needed to get 3 bids. So we've helped that, So and what are some of the limitations of RFPs that we talk about? Most of the time, and this is what we see with RFPs all the time, the RFP that we get, we go, what he said, why the hell do they need that, right? Like, they're coming to us telling us with a technology need, with a need for something like managed services or even a copier or something. You're like, why do they need a copier that can do 400,000 pages a day, right? And but that's what they had before because someone sold them that, and they come back and that's what we need now. And nobody's really reevaluating whether or not the technology was the right technology, or whether or not the people in the room even understand what they need, like where they're going with it. Oh, so we need a new copier because we had a new copier before, but you haven't watched that copier machine went from doing 100,000 pages a month down to 20,000 pages a month. So you don't need the same machine anymore, things like that, right? So that's what we see a lot, is that people don't really know. They're just rebuying what they bought last time, or they're making assumptions based off of the last time they purchased that product, right? So vendors respond to your assumptions. We looked at the last RFP that we got, and it was like, okay, so if we look at this RFP, they're making an assumption that they need this type of technology, but we don't really think they need that technology, but we have to bid it anyway, right? So now our bids are going to be maybe twice as much as what we would have given them if we had a chance to talk to them about and ask them why they even needed that thing to begin with. And then so that's a problem. They definitely limit innovation. They don't allow you to speak ahead of time. It basically, you're assuming in an RFP process that you know exactly what you need. And how do you know that? Because if you don't have someone outside really doing that consulting first for you, or really spending a lot of time looking at a vision of where you guys want to go, right? So the RFP kind of limits you to a space and time and not where you want to be in the future, right? So they have very high failure rates, especially on the IT side. And I'm going to say it's not just nonprofits, it's across the board. We've run into these problems too with IT. IT generally has, if they don't have good champions behind them, if they don't have the buy-in of the entire organization, then they generally have high failure rates because you don't know how much goes into it. Somebody's not really focused on it. People don't necessarily believe it got harder to do than we thought it was going to be. Salesforce is one of those ones where everybody's like, we need Salesforce. Everybody uses Salesforce. And you get into Salesforce and you're like, oh my God, this is a behemoth. And then it fails. Or you use this much of it, and you had to go get 4 other products to do all the other things that you need, right? So they do have very high failure rates, right? So what are some cases when you actually should use an RFP? Really, really high complex custom projects with, and the specific there is no existing market comparison. And it's very, very few and far between. They're very rare cases that you would use an RFP to do that. And usually you're doing the RFP to get somebody to give you more information about the project that you're going to create. So who are the vendors that you're going to go out and say, I need a consultant to come in to tell me how to create that custom project, or those kind of things. You might use it for that, right? If you're legally mandated for RFPs, there are certain federal contracts, some grants that you guys use. You got to use that process. Even when you use that process, you can supplement it with what I'm going to talk about in the future to say, well, we didn't really use the RFP process, but we used a similar process that got better results. And they'll usually take that in that case. You have some requirements because of public accountability. And then even then, now, and we're going to talk a little bit about how AI can help you guys with this. And I probably should have put a little AI tag on the bottom of this. I probably would have had 20 more people in the room if I just put with AI at the bottom. But we're seeing now that you can, like, the AI process here can take about 90% of that RFP process out, help with scoring and helping with all that stuff. So even if you have to do an RFP process, you can run this through AI now and kind of fix a lot of the problems that happened in the past, right? So RFPs ensure that we get the best price. That is a lot. That's a myth we see constantly. And sometimes the best price isn't the best price, right? We know that. We just talked about that before. They lead to vendors cutting costs, or in another case, so they want to meet your thing, so they tell you exactly what you want and they give you a price based off of that. Or in our case, sometimes the vendors, the prices, we don't know how to give you the best price, so we just give you the highest price. And hopefully you guys take it, because we're worried that we might get into more, because we know that what you're putting on a piece of paper probably isn't the whole story, right? So we're going to go, listen, I've asked questions, you put to be determined, or maybe you couldn't answer all the information about your servers and stuff. So we're going to say, for a normal customer your size, maybe that's $5,000 a month. But since there's so much information that's lacking here, I'm going to make it 10 grand a month, because that's what we have to do. And if we win the bid, great. And sometimes that helps, and sometimes that's the right number. 10 grand might have been the right number, right? But we don't know that, so we're taking assumptions. So you're not necessarily, if you're getting the lowest price or the best price, They might just be giving you what you want, and the person who's higher might actually be looking and saying, no, they probably need more than they think they need. So that's why those prices are not necessarily the best thing to do, right? They look objective and cost effective, but there are obviously hidden costs. We talked about, in the video, they talked about how much resources go into this RFP process for people who really maybe don't even understand what they're doing. They've never done this type of RFP before. So, you know, we talked evaluation, it's weeks and months, and then, or one of two things happens. It either takes a very, very long time to do an RFP, and people get, you know, they get distracted, other things come up, they don't, or they try to compress it in as fast a timeline as possible, and it really puts everybody on their heels trying to respond, and then they don't get enough vendors that respond, and they go, shoot, we got to go and extend the process, right? Or they don't get the right information, or they get too many vendors, and they have to extend the process because they can't evaluate all the vendors. So it's like this whole process gets very, it either gets compressed and you get bad information and bad timelines, and people don't like, it actually looks kind of, in some cases, what I'll say, unprofessional in some cases, to go like, oh yeah, we gave you this timeline, this one company was ready to bid, but we can't just do one company, we can't just have one company bid, so we're going to extend it for all those other companies that couldn't bid or didn't want to bid, but that one company was ready. That's kind of like, you know, that's not fair, right? That's not fair to that company, but so that's what we see regularly. It happens all the time. You know, the time spent is not mission critical strategy stuff, so it's taking you away, and we talk about this regularly. If you follow a guy called Simon Sinek, he does a book called Start With Why, but his thing is you guys are for impact, right? You got to make sure you're getting the most impact out of what you do on a daily basis on a nonprofit side, and usually this is not the thing that's giving you the most impact, right? So the external costs that come back, again, vendors like myself, we may say, okay, we're just going to bid this low, but then we're going to get in there, and all of a sudden you're going to have all these projects, and you're going to be like, oh, you didn't tell me about all this stuff, and be like, we didn't know about all that stuff, right? Again, top vendors may opt out, and in one of the recent bids that we did, I was like, we should just stop, right? And if I didn't know somebody, if I didn't have some friends in the organization, I probably would have just walked away from that bid, because it was like, this is just not right, right? So good vendors, when they see bad bids like that, the best vendors walk away. So, and then the winner's curse. The best proposal on paper isn't always the best partner. And you don't necessarily know that because you haven't spent enough time with them, because you tried to compress that all down into a short period of time, right? So, poor matches, again, RFP driven, they often meet the requirements that you put down, but not what you actually needed, right? So they miss core things regularly. Re-implementation, obviously, not getting the right information, especially in technology, you get stuck in bad technology. You wind up with what nonprofits have a lot, which is 7 products doing what they hope one could do, but they couldn't get one to do it, so then they went out and bought other ones. And this one was free and cheap, even though we had an RFP process, all those kind of things. And usually those perceived savings disappear, right? This is an example of an unrealistic timeline that we had. We hit this deadline for vendor select. They started in October, but they needed the event to bid. By December, they were going to have, by December 20th, I want to look at the dates here. December 20th was when they were going to select the vendor, but on January 1st, they wanted the vendor to start. Well, what's going on between December 20th and January 1st? I don't know, New Year's, Christmas, we're supposed to take them over in that period of time, right? That's such a compressed timeline, and that's really almost impossible to meet, and it's like, well, how can you even do that? Like, it's like, who thought that was a good idea to begin with? And are you really going to get the best people to do the best work and enough time to figure that out in that period of time? Not just for the vendor themselves, but for your own team. They're not going to have enough time figuring that out. And then that team is supposed to implement you with all your problems and issues that you put in your RFP that you want solved. Okay, so that's that. So in short, the RFP process, it's high overhead, low insight. It's got no efficiency in it whatsoever. It really takes a long time. It just, for me, it doesn't really focus on solving the core problems that an organization have. It's just really, it's an administrative thing it's like one of those things that we just keep doing it because we keep doing it, And why do we keep doing it? If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, which is bad products and bad services. So what can we do differently? That's what we're talking about now. What can we do differently along this process to say, what can make this better, right? So we recommend, and we talk about 2 different other approaches that you guys can take, right? And those 2 approaches are implementation or discovery approaches. So what's the difference between that? An implementation says, let's find something small. Copier company as an example, right? We have a copier company, we need a new copier. We don't want to change our whole fleet, but let's see if we can bring them in to do something, a small project for us. Try them out, see how they respond, push their buttons, right? Call their service centers, do those things. Put some small projects together with those kind of vendors first that you know maybe have short time periods. If we need a copier just for this office that we're popping up for the next 6 months. Okay, can you do that, right? So create those small kind of things and see how you guys function together. See how they respond to you. See how they work with you, right? So that's what the implementation approach is. Those are pick small projects and get them out there. The discovery approach is the approach that Techworks usually takes, which is let's get either one or more vendor to do an assessment on us first. So Techworks as an example, we might come out, we want to do a technology assessment on you, but that technology assessment isn't necessarily just the tech that you have. It's also like, what does the business feel about technology? Is the chief technology officer on the same page as the marketing officer, as the person who they think runs IT? And I'll give you a prime example of what goes on in that discovery approach. On one of the ones that we went in to do the discovery, we had 3 people in the same organization tell us that they were the head of IT, right? So that's the kind of things that we're looking for. How could you ever go to an RFP? How could you ever go to that when you have these core issues inside an organization? So you can do this with one, what Techworks generally says is, let us come in and do an assessment for you, and you usually pay for these, right? There's something you want to pay for, but that's going to give you a basis that you can go to 2 or 3 other vendors with first. That's one way to do it. And now you've worked with someone like Techworks, you've talked about what your future is like, what the ideas are out there, what technology could be, and you have this baseline to go compare them against other people. Now, the other process is you do 2 or 3 of those, and you say, well, the process that we went through with Techworks and with Evergreen or whoever they are, these other companies, we liked the way they did their process. We liked working with them. We liked what they said to us, and we're comparing now 3 solutions as opposed to one solution that we think we need, 3 options for solutions. Maybe one's a cloud solution, maybe one's on-prem, maybe something else. So you're now looking at 3 different businesses. You've had interactions with 3 or 4 different organizations. Yes, you've paid for that, but it actually saves you time and money because your people aren't spending all of their time trying to do this RFP process and trying to figure out who the best is. And you get some personal attention from those people. So they're trying to talk about you. They're educating you going along that process. So that's what the discovery approach is. And we think that those processes done correctly, and if you needed 3 bids, you get 3 vendors, right? Fine, great. You had 3 vendors come in and do that. Those processes are better. So why do we think the discovery approach? Again, talk about that initial paid assessment, multiple vendors coming in. You can refine those. After the first discovery, you can say, oh, guys, we need to also talk about this, and we need to talk about that. So you're not stuck in one RFP solution. You're stuck in you have the ability to go, maybe we need to ask these vendors something else because we got some new information that we had before. It's a much more informed decision-making process, right? This tests reality versus theory. It reduces risks, to be honest with you. You're doing those things. You can make faster decision-making processes. An assessment on our side of an organization, let's say they have 400 people, 200 people, something along that line, you're talking about a 2 to 3 week process to do that. Versus, and you're going to have some tangible information at the end that you can give to your board and you can give to that. So, and sometimes even less, you can do that rapidly, and you can get multiple ones of those pretty quickly if they're decent organizations that do this all the time, right? You can also check, again, like we talked about, for cultural fit. Do their missions meet your mission? Do they seem to work together? Do they, are they close to you guys? Whatever it is, you can build some trust inside those pilot programs or through the time that you're doing those assessments, right? So, again, we talked about some of those solutions. You can assess multiple approaches. You can reduce risk and see if they're a better fit. So these drastically reduce costs when we do that, because when we start to compare the amount of time and effort, like that gentleman was talking about in the video, your effort inside this process is usually much less. You still have to have a key piece of that, but most of the effort is put on the cost that you're paying to the vendor, and they're happy to do that for you and do that work for you, right? So, and when you do paid assessments, you're looking for people that are doing this professionally. So what you wind up with is, somebody will come in there and say, I'll do that assessment for you for free. Well, okay, maybe they will, but are you going to get the right product? So you just got to be careful about those that are kind of like, this slide's a little off. I'm gonna have to fix it for my next version, but it's called tire kickers. So again, faster path to solution, reduces evaluation overhead. Instead of comparing 10 boarded proposals, you're comparing 2 or 3 well-tailored to your business, to the conversations that they had with you, to the solutions that you guys are looking for, is a much better way to go that, and it helps you guys make clearer decisions. Again, because you're getting multiple options. You're just really able to do that, right? So, focused on total cultural ownership. These are probably some slides that, when I move forward, I'll take out. So when that discovery works best, do you have complex integrations? You need some digital transformation. If you need digital transformation, if your organization has technology, and you're like, this technology sucks, why do you want to put an RFP bid? You want somebody who's going to show you what the new future of that technology is, right? And not assume that you're going to put something on paper and just continue to do. So if you're in the middle of digital transformation, RFPs are almost useless. They're useless because you don't know what the hell you want, right? You don't have uncertain requirements, and you have high-stakes implementations, right? So that's the discovery-first approach. So what are we talking about in the future? So I wanted to, as we go through this quickly and as I add the slides in here for AI, this is an interesting topic because we just picked up a client who, I was talking to him at one of the events recently, and I said, I'm really glad you picked us because I know, we're not the cheapest option out there. And he goes, oh no, you guys are the cheapest. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you guys are the cheap. I compared you with AI. I put your bid in AI and all the things and services that you guys were offering and the contract terms and all that stuff in there. And from a value return on investment standpoint, you guys were the cheapest or the most valuable in his case. So he used AI and the contracts that we put out there and the costs that we put out there to compare us against 2 or 3 other people who did the same thing for him, and use that tool to say, am I evaluating this correctly? Am I evaluating it just because I like, the way Connor shaves his beard, or am I evaluating this because that's the most valuable piece to this? And AI is a great tool for that, right? So it was very interesting because even whether you're doing it for RFPs, even if you're creating an RFP, that AI can help you create that, can really turn down that process. It can help you do some evaluation on your own side to educate yourself on whether or not the information I'm giving you is correct, right? I come in here, I say, this is the approach. You need to go out and go get a cloud service. You need to buy HubSpot or whatever. And you can then run that back through AI and have a 4th tool to kind of tell you, I got 3 bids, but this 4th bid is somebody's, is also AI, and it's kind of impartial, right? So that's not bad, right? So the other thing is AI, as we start to move forward, we're going to talk about AI in a different model. You guys are going to be empowered on your own moving forward to kind of create your own applications very quickly, right? And I know that seems something weird because you guys don't write applications and none of us do, but it's going to be kind of like, back in the day, we also didn't print all our own brochures and stuff. We had to go to a printer to print that, and then all of a sudden we got a printer that can do color and beautiful brochures, and now we do that stuff ourselves, right? That would have been something that a professional did in the past. Well, you guys are going to write software just like that, and you can start talking about things like matchmaking software, where you can put your inputs and think about how all of my products, as I grow through an organization, what organizations are going to match what I need in the future. You can take those 3 vendors and make that, look at all the vendors that are out there and all the solutions that we got, match them together and say, do they meet our criteria now and in the future? So it's just interesting. You're going to talk about the way AI is going to change this whole process for all of us, because we're all going to be writing, even though we're not writing, AI is going to be generating that software for us, but they're going to give us ideas like being able to create matchmaking products that just go out there and are working in the background all the time. So you go out in the morning and you say, go search the web and find me 10 products that do these things that I need to do, that fit who I am as an organization and what I've done in the past. And here's some of the challenges that I've had. And in the morning, you're going to come in and there's going to be, here's some products that work for you. And now you can start looking at those vendors differently as opposed to just going on Google and say, who does this thing, right? They have different criteria they've been added to. So it's really these comparison reports that we're talking about. So that's how AI is going to change this whole game. I personally believe that the RFP process is going to be dead within probably the next 2 to 5 years, somewhere around there. Like most people are going to say, it just doesn't make sense anymore. We can do it better in a different way. I can respond to that as a vendor with AI in a better way, and you guys can ask me questions in a better way, and we can have a better process. So that's what I got for you guys. Again, I tried to run through it quickly, not take up too much of your time. again, I'd like your feedback on what you guys think about this. I'd like to take your questions because this is, again, these are, we do these in front of small groups so that we can get them in front of larger groups and make them more powerful. So thank you guys. I hope you found it enjoyable, and I'd love to take some questions, if there are any. Yes.
Assessment where somebody comes in. You don't want to be too far ahead of the ball where the lease might not be coming due and technology might be changing. Do you guys personally have a sweet spot where you'll say, hey, I think now we're probably the time that we will get ourselves up to an assessment to gather the information so we're not rushed, we're not pigeonholed?
Well, I mean, certainly you don't want to go into, if you have a copier agreement, a phone agreement, a managed service agreement, or any kind of tech agreement, and you got to make that decision because you didn't have it on your kind of vision plan that this thing that's important to us was ended, is going to end in 6 months, then you're going to be up against making bad decisions, right? So at least in general, like start 6 months ahead of wherever those contracts end and those things end. But from that standpoint, if you're really doing, and like we at Techworks, we try to find, we kind of follow this EOS model, which is like you should have a 5-year plan out there. You should be working that 5-year plan back to 3 years. You should be working that 3-year plan back to what you need to cover in 1 year. And you should almost have that on a timeline of here's all the products and when they end. And to be honest with you, if it's not functioning at any point in time, I don't care if you have a contract with them. You don't care if you have a contract with us. Bring somebody else to do an assessment on us, right? Bring somebody else in. So I would say the good time, certainly as contracts end, you want to be able to look at that stuff. But if you're not happy with your current IT provider, maybe we just help your current IT provider get better, right? Maybe that solution, you don't know that there's something else that goes out there. Those are the kind of things, like we've done that before. I've done assessments on other competitors of mine that I'm even friendly with. And I was like, yeah, these guys are great, but they're missing this and this and that, and you guys need that. Or here's another way they could do it, right? And you paid me for that, so I don't care if you use me or not, right? Like, at least I got my time covered. It's not like, hey, do this thing for free so that I can keep my current IT, which is the way RFPs and sometimes these things that come in, oh, we're going to come in and do an assessment. It's like the guy, like it's like, you know, there was a difference. I had the siding done on my house, and I had one guy walk around my house and go like this, right? And he just walked around, measured everything, and goes, oh, okay, it's going to be like $35,000. And the other guy that came over was like, I'm going to poke the walls for you. I'm going to draw up something for you. It's like, I have this assessment process. And he found issues that person who told me it was going to be $35,000 didn't find, because I paid the other guy to go actually do like a home inspection on the house while I was doing this. And here's some rot that you need to fix. Here's this thing here. So now 35 was going to be $40,000 or 45, and maybe that's the same price the other guy would have charged me, but at least I knew it was coming, right? That's the kind of thing. So at any point in time, I think those kind of assessments are great because they're limited costs versus the amount that you put into them, you know, but, versus what you get out of them. So. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Yeah. I will tell you, and you know, the guy that I had up there is actually somebody I know who did that RFP thing, and that's what he's an IT broker, right? And there are good ones and bad ones out there, like anything else. And I'll tell you again the story of a recent RFP. They paid money to have a broker come in, and this is actually the last 2 RFPs that we did. They paid money to have a broker come in and tell them what they needed, and then I looked at that RFP and I go, this makes no sense. Who thought that this is what they needed? I'll actually give you another example. I came in from a company one time that was $400 million, and they showed me the bid that the RFP process that they were going through to get a new IT company. And they paid this company called CSC $300,000 to write up their RFP process because they were a big organization. And I sat down with the vice president, who happened to be a friend of mine, and I looked and I said, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read in my entire life. Like, you guys can't implement anything that this company that you just paid $300 to, you can't implement any of their stuff. It's impossible to do what you're telling you to do. You just wasted $300,000 on this thing. And I came in and I just, you know, for like, I think 10 grand, I wrote them a new process, and that's what we wound up implementing. So that's the difference is that they just had somebody from the outside who doesn't know everything, or was listening to the people on the inside who may have their own politics, their own delusions, their own whatever about what's going on. Tell them what they need, and then they're putting that out, and now you're stuck with those, again, what may be internal processes in your organization already that are problems. So those are two examples recently that we've seen on two RFPs that we did, and an example that I had years ago where I looked at that and I was like, you guys paid $300,000 for nothing. Like it was useless, 100% useless. Anything else, guys? Well, I hope you enjoyed it. If there's anything you think we can do better with this presentation, I'd love to hear it, because again, this is going to go out to the group, the Impact Collaborative, and we're going to try to make it, refine it for a podcast that we do with them. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.